And now, ladies and gentlemen, here we have Mr. Andrew Swan.
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I was just on the phone to Norman Grants, actually, just making sure that this afternoon's concert was okay with him. Little in-joke there. How are you all going this afternoon? Everyone good? I really do appreciate you all coming along. It's when the Arts Centre called me up and they said, we'd like you to put a show on, I thought, well, we could just go and do another gig, or I can think about something else. I thought, oh, I know, an Oscar Peterson tribute, let's just do that. And of course, once I sort of pushed send, I thought, wow, okay, this is going to be it. To give you a little bit of a background on why I chose Oscar Peterson this afternoon, I grew up, my father's a jazz musician, he's not with us anymore, but I know he'll be listening in this afternoon. I grew up listening to Oscar Peterson in the background from about 12 midnight to about 4 o'clock in the morning every time there were guests and people coming over. It was always seemed to be a go-to for Dad to present to his guests. He worked for Cathay Pacific Airways and he always had these managers and different people coming over. And I just remember hearing that beautiful tinkling and that virtuosity in the background. I'm sure we have many Oscar Peterson fans here today. Everyone knows who Oscar Peterson is, right? Well, you do now. And I think an element of that for me also was the way he connected with the blues. And that's why I put it in the program today, not just to play or try to be Oscar Peterson. Of course, that's beyond most people or anybody. But to tap into what it made, what I chose to be, I guess, as a musician, what I saw to inspire other musicians as well, like the guys I have today joining us, is a connection via the blues. And it is such an important element in jazz, never to be understated. And I felt, let's just try to maybe tap into that as a connection and maybe take you through the life story of Oscar in a brief kind of way, in the best way we can, and obviously pay homage to such a wonderful musician. So thank you once again. Thank you so much for coming today. And I'd like to, in my humble way, play a little bit of piano for you. I'm certainly not a virtuosic pianist, but I do feel the blues. I like playing the blues, and I'd like to just play a little thing here to warm the room up a little bit. Thank you. Every day, babe, I have the blues, yeah. Every day, yeah, I have the blues. When you see me at work, baby, crying 'cause it's you I hate to lose. Oscar Manuel Peterson was born in 1925, Montreal, Canada. His father was a railroad porter. His mother was a piano teacher. They grew up in a sort of predominantly black neighborhood. Of course, Oscar absorbing all the blues that was going on around there. His nickname was the Brown Bomber, because he could play those boogie-woogie blues pretty well. His sister was actually one of his first teachers, and her name was Daisy, and her thing was classical music. Kind of a long stretch from the blues, but bands be passing through. Oscar Peterson actually started to play the piano when he was 5. He was also playing the trumpet until a bout of tuberculosis kind of messed that up. And by the age of 7, he was predominantly just learning the piano and doing the best, practicing between 5 and 6 hours a day. The jazz bands kind of coming through at that time, affording Oscar the opportunity to hear some of those bands, and of course he was exposed to the great Art Tatum. His father bought him home a version of Tiger Rag, and that was it. He decided he couldn't play the piano. He put the piano down for about 3 months, decided that it's going to be a little bit too much for him to kind of attempt to, I guess, be as good as that person, a young man. At the age of 14, he was able to, I guess, complete his apprenticeship, and as he was heading in that direction of becoming a virtuoso, he entered a piano competition and found himself the winner of that through the Canadian BBC, and he left school at 14 to obviously further his career. That takes us to the next point. Thank you for indulging me with my piano, and I'll now head over to my professional instrument, the drums. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome one of Australia's greatest double bass players, Mr. James Clark. Yeah. Who incidentally had bass lessons with the great Ray Brown himself. And I was very fortunate to actually meet Oscar Peterson. I lived in New York for a couple of years, back and forth, from about the year 2000 till about 2008. I went to the Blue Note and saw him play, and I thought, fantastic. Of course, he had a stroke by then. The right hand was impeccable. The left hand was kind of comping in very, I guess, sort of a limited way, but still full and swinging, always swinging. So I went back there the next night, saw him again. And I noticed there was this van sitting outside the Blue Note. It's the snow, right? It's like January or something. And by that stage, Oscar was, suffering a few different ailments, not just the stroke, but a few other things going on. And he was unable to make it up the stairs to the changing room. So he was sitting in his caravan, basically, or his studio out the front. And there was a couple of people standing outside. I thought, oh, well. And the gentleman was so kind. He said, look, would you like to meet Oscar? There was someone outside, and I'm not sure exactly how they went. It was something like that after a couple of beers, of course. And I waited my turn, and a gentleman opened the door and let me in, and I walked in, and of course the great Oscar Peterson, there he was, sitting there, big smile on his face, very accommodating, most beautiful man. Gave me an opportunity to, I guess, get over my nerves within 10 minutes, and my father having had a stroke as well. We had a little bit in common. We didn't sort of dwell on that too much, but he was full of life, and this was a couple of years, and when I think about it, it wasn't 2008, it would have been about 2005. He passed in 2007. I'm just thinking about that moment now where I had an opportunity to sit down, talked about his concerts that were coming up, still full of life, still loving to play, not burned out, not, kind of like, oh, another gig, this and that, the other, just wonderful, and so giving of his time. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very lucky today to have one of the great piano players, one of the great piano families, the one and only, please put your hands together, Mr. Steve Sedergreen. Steve Sattergreen, ladies and gentlemen. James Clark. Woo! Now, of course, you've been watching Oscar for the last 10 or 15 minutes, so how do you think we compare? It's a tough call. You know, you call up a piano player and you say, right, I've got a gig for... Actually, no, Steve called me and I don't know how it goes. He was talking to me about a gig and I said, oh, would you like to do a gig on, you know, your available? Oh, sure, man, yeah. I think later on I told him, oh, by the way, it's an Oscar Peterson tribute. Oh, what? So, you know, sorry. I'd like to move on now. This next composition is by the great Dizzy Gillespie, actually. The reason I chose this composition is it has a classical element to it. It's a tune called Con Elmer. And again, today we're looking at the development of such a great musician. How did Oscar Peterson become Oscar Peterson? You know, he put schools together. There were people that listened to his music. I mean, everyone's tried to emulate in some way or be inspired by his music. There's no way to... You can't learn it, you know. You kind of are it. I think that's the best sound that you can possibly come to. You try to be yourself. That's what we're trying to do today as well. We're not trying to be the Oscar Peterson trio. We are who we are. We're inspired by Oscar's music. But we are paying reference to this stage of his development, which was, of course, classical music. He was trained by Paul DeMarchi, actually, in Canada. And in Canada, he was actually trained... Paul was actually trained by a gentleman who studied with Franz Liszt. So there was a fantastic lineage there, an opportunity to learn from some of Canada's greatest piano players who inspired and encouraged Oscar at such an early age. This is our tribute to that classical period of Oscar's development, Con Elmer. where classical music meets the African experience. This is where jazz is born. Thank you very much. Nat King Cole, ladies and gentlemen, Nat King Cole. The reason I mention that is that he was such an inspiration to Oscar. And a lot of others too, actually. If you do a little bit of research on Oscar, you do find that, of course, there were people like Ray Charles, all talk about Nat King Cole. And Nat was, I guess, a pop star by the time Oscar was appearing on the stage and working his way around. In relation to that, Nat was such a fantastic piano player that later in life, when the two of them met and I guess had a bit of a chat about piano playing and things like that, of course, Oscar began to sing as well. And when Oscar started singing, he started sounding exactly like Nat King Cole. So when they met, they made a deal. Nat said, "Look, I won't play the piano if you don't sing." Does anyone know that story? I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, a titan like both of them, like a titan. Like Nat Cole deciding that essentially after that, all his records were essentially more orchestral based and less of the kind of finesse and the amazing pianist, I guess, recordings that he made. So we'd like to move on and play a tribute to that part of his excursion, his musical excursion. A tune called Sweet Lorraine. I just found joy. I'm happy as a baby boy with another brand new choo-choo toy. Since I met my sweet Lorraine, oh Lorraine, she got a pair of eyes brighter than the summer sky. I hope you're gonna realize why I love my sweet Lorraine. When it's raining, I don't miss the sun, 'cause it's in my baby's eyes. And to think I'm the lucky one that would lead her down the aisle. Yeah, each night I pray that no one steals her heart away. Man, I can't wait till that lucky day when I marry my sweet Lorraine. Oh yeah. Yeah. Man, I just found joy. I'm happy as a baby boy, yeah, with another brand new choo-choo toy. I met my sweet Lorraine. Like Roy Eldridge. When it's raining, I don't miss that sun, 'cause in my baby's eyes, yeah. And to think I'm the lucky one that would lead her down the aisle. Oh, each night I pray no one's gonna steal her heart away. Man, I can't wait till that lucky day. Can't wait till that lucky day. Can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah. Yeah. There's the blues. That's what I'm talking about. Till I marry sweet Lorraine. What a band. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, who knows or who has a record of the Ella and Louis sessions on Verve? Anybody? Yeah? 1, 2 people. 3? Ella and Louis? Yep. What do you think? Fantastic, right? Oscar Peterson was such a great performer, not just in his own right, but phenomenally a great accompanist, as these guys are. Given the opportunity to kind of maybe relax behind the spotlight, you know, not to sort of always be playing incredible piano solos and doing that. And of course, he loved other musicians, namely, of course, on those sessions, Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. It's hard to choose. You go back and you think, well, what would we like to play today? And we could just keep playing. I've got a list, you know, I've got 5 pages of great songs, great arrangements. But I did choose that time because, of course, Norman Granz came along. I'd like to talk to you about that association right now. Norman Granz, does everyone know who Norman Granz is? Okay. Norman Granz is probably one of the greatest jazz promoters in American jazz music history. He was the gentleman that put together the Jazz at the Philharmonic recordings and concerts, where he would bring together all of the greatest musicians at the time and put them on concert at Carnegie Hall or the Jazz at the Philharmonic. And of course, that would tour internationally as well. And Oscar was always part of that rhythm section, or he was from 1940. This association began because they found themselves, he found himself, you know, looking and doing a bit of promoting in Canada at the time, and he was making his way back to the airport one evening in 1940 and had the radio, the cabbie had the radio playing. And he heard this incredible jazz piano going on. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He made the cab driver stop the cab, turn around, find out where that club was. He went to the club, and this is when they first met. He went to the club, he walked in, and there was Oscar Peterson playing. Of course, it was a live broadcast, 1940, and they had a chat. And Norman said, I'd love to bring you to America. We'd like to obviously showcase what you do and that kind of thing. I mean, an incredible moment in jazz history that night. Norman actually found it very difficult to get Oscar a work permit in America for various reasons. So he chose to do this. I want you to imagine Carnegie Hall. It's 1941, of course, the Second World War. And the I guess, what are you going to do? You've got Oscar Peterson. You'd like to present him, but you can't present him. So he planted Oscar in the audience and had another band playing. And at one point there, one of the musicians was told to say, "Oh, look who's in the audience. Oscar Peterson's here." Oscar Peterson, ladies and gentlemen. You may not have heard of Oscar Peterson, but we'd like to present this gentleman up on stage. He got up and completely floored them. They'd never heard anything like it. Other than, and I will say that name now, Art Tatum. Does everyone know who Art Tatum is? Okay, yes. Art Tatum, probably, what am I going to say, better than Oscar. It's a weird word, better. But probably Oscar's greatest inspiration on piano. He wouldn't play in front of Art Tatum. He was too embarrassed. So, of course, America had heard of Art Tatum. But beyond Art Tatum, Oscar Peterson had arrived at Carnegie Hall. We'd like to now present that era, and again, the association with Norman Granz and the Ella and Louie recording. This is a tune called Gee Baby, Ain't I Good to You. What makes me treat you the way I do? Gee, baby, ain't I good to you? Nothing's so good, girl, that's so true. Yeah, baby, ain't I good to you? There's the blues. I bought you that fur coat for Christmas and the diamond ring. Must be sports cars, yes, and everything. Love makes me treat you the way that I do. Yeah, now, baby, hey, now, okay, take it, Steve. Well, now I bought you that fur coat for Christmas and the big diamond ring. The Mercedes-Benz sports cars, yes, and everything. Yeah. Love makes me treat you in the way that was Louis Armstrong, by the way. Sorry, not I'm gonna. You know, I'm not even gonna attempt to do Ella Fitzgerald. Yeah, now, gee, baby. Ain't I good to you? Oh, gee, baby, ain't I good to you? That's Sunday morning. Thank you. I'm just whispering over here. We're professionals. No hand signs, secret things going on here. Are you enjoying yourself this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Do you know this is our first gig trying this one out, and we are filming. I'll let you know. I guess for an archival purposes, of course. And it's for us to, I guess, be able to look at it and see, are we going to make something out of this? Do you think we should take this further and take this concept a little further? You like the idea? Thank you. It's our first run in it, so here you guys are. It's like a special moment for us too. I'd like to talk about one of the great titans in jazz right now, not Oscar Peterson, but the one and only Duke Ellington. I lived and worked in New York City for a little while, and I was working at a club which is called Sweet Rhythm, which used to be Old Sweet Basil. Has anyone been to that club? It's where Miles Davis used to play, Doc Severinsen, Art Blakey used to hold court there on a number of seasons throughout the year. I actually got to serve. When I say serve, I mean I did all sorts of things. I was, doing sound for the bands, and I ran a big band on the Sunday nights there, and a few other little sort of jam sessions with John Eric Kelso and those kind of people. The reason I'm saying this is because one night I was there, and the Ellington family were there. I mean, and when I say the Ellington family, it was, fairly immediate. I think it was his sister and or something like his auntie or something. Anyway, it was the Ellington family, and it was a big deal for me. So I thought I'd just lay that on you and show off. But when I did a little research into what did Oscar used to play, did he play songs regularly? Was there a regular format, and were there songs that he sort of went back to time and again? He was such a fan of Oscar Peterson, Duke Ellington. And his teacher, actually, I believe her name was Mrs. Clinkscales, joke there. She said, Edward, let me give you one piece of advice. Don't ever sit at the piano after Oscar Peterson. So, that's the kind of reverberation that was going on. He had a number of nicknames, but Duke Ellington used to call him the Maharaja of the piano. They did work together. There are some recordings out there with Oscar on piano with the Duke Ellington Big Band Orchestra, and fantastic. But I guess one of the things I thought we could include today would be a Duke Ellington medley. Would you like to hear a Duke Ellington medley? Great. So that is an opportunity, obviously, for us to play Duke Ellington music. I think it, obviously, for a piano player harmonically, to be able to hear and to be able to work within the chords and the chord structures that Duke Ellington would compose with Billy Strayhorn, affords a piano player room to stretch out. We're going to focus on an album called Night Train, which was a blues element of obviously Oscar's CD collection, and he's approached to a tune called Sea Jam Blues. Another tune, Satin Doll, and then we'll finish off with the great Once Hit Soul composition, which is Caravan. Oscar. hear one more. Do one more, mate. Do one more. Come on. There's the blues again. Guess what song this is? Swing it out, man. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Put your hands together, one another. Mr. Steve Settergreen, piano. On the bass, Mr. James Clark there. Give yourselves a big round of applause for making us feel so welcome. Thank you so much for being our, I guess, our sounding board today to be able to run this show and check it out. Did you enjoy it? Have you enjoyed it? Thank you. We've got another set coming up in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes time, so please don't go anywhere. There's more food, I believe. Is that right? Tea and coffee? Yeah. Every day. Every day, baby, I have the blues. Just like Joe Williams said, when you see me worried, baby, crying cause it's you I hate to lose. Nobody love me. I haven't heard that before. Nobody love me. Speaking of bad luck and trouble, baby, well, you know I had my share. I'm gonna pack my suitcase and move on down the line. I'm gonna pack my suitcase and move on down the line. Feels good. Where there ain't nobody worrying, there ain't nobody crying. Seems to me every day, I have the blues every day. When you see me worry, but it's crying cause you hate to lose. Thank you. We'll be back shortly. Thank you so much. Well, I wish that I knew how it feels to be free. And I wish I could break all the chains holding me. And I wish I could know just how it feels to be free. Then you know, then you would agree, every man and child should be free. Well, I wish I could share all love in my heart. Remove all the bars, yeah. Keep us all apart, yes. And I wish you could know just how it feels, baby, to be me. And then you know, and you would agree, every man and child should be free. in the sky. How sweet it would be now. I thought I could fly. Yes, and I would soar right up to the sun. Right down, baby, down to the sea. Then you know, and you would agree, every man and child should be free. Then you know, and you would agree, every man and child should be free. Then you know, and you would agree, and down the road, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was a Dr. Billy Taylor composition. Wish I knew how to be free. It was a recording actually by Nina Simone, and I played that song because there is a large, people talk about classical music, they talk about blues music, and they talk about jazz. In there somewhere is gospel music. And when I say somewhere, I say that because it depends on how you feel emotionally about your spirit or your God or however you are and who you are. And that really is the essence of my favorite recordings of Oscar. When he plays, and possibly that's why when he's in a supporting role, he maybe, kind of can just sort of help someone out. He's got a very giving spirit. He wanted to learn, but he also wanted to give his music. He wanted to share his music. He was an educator. He started a number of facilities in Canada to help, of course, people who wanted to know how to play jazz and how to play piano, that kind of thing. So it's in that spirit that we try to sort of approach this second set with a tip of the hat to the gospel reference that I think connects us and binds us all, whatever it is, whatever your blues is or whatever your feelings are, that we try to bring that into the music, not just sort of play at you, but to be part of it and bring the music to you in a real way. That means mistakes and everything. It may mean sometimes the more unrehearsed the song is, sometimes the closer you get to kind of maybe being the musician that you are, rather than maybe just hiding behind a chart or playing a song that you've played 1,000,000 times or something like that. There's a danger element there, and some of the great bands are able to tap into that. You can tell on some of the recordings of the Ella and Louis recordings, for example, there's moments there where there are mistakes being made, but people are told to go on, keep it going, keep going, and that's some of the favorite moments. So again, paying reference to gospel music and being a little bit vulnerable on stage and being able to kind of bring something to it. So I'm not a great piano player. I'm not Oscar Peterson, and we're not the Oscar Peterson trio, but we love the music, and we're trying to bring, our spirit to the table today, and to say to you, look, we love this music. We grew up with this music. We go backstage for 20 minutes, and all we talk about is Oscar Peterson and other great stories. These guys have got all their great stories about it. James Clark on bass, ladies and gentlemen. He actually met the great Ray Brown twice, had lessons with him, and we're learning more about that. So if we were to do another show, please stay in touch, and we'd love to see you again. We've got another show coming up at 4 o'clock, but I think all the tickets are sold out. We'll be trying to, we'd like to play this again. So without moving around too much, this next composition is in the reference of the gospel. It's a tune called Hymn to Freedom. Oscar wrote this song. He was interested in also writing for things like chorale and also to be able to a Christmas arrangements for very like sort of elaborate extended sort of themes of his virtuosity, because I think that sometimes people just want to hear a fast piano solo, and I think that you can, and again, going back into those interviews and hearing where he's coming from, and his critics, and you had his critics, people sort of saying it's a lot of flash in the pan, and does he have to play so many notes? Can't he just sort of play half as many notes? And people like Miles Davis were a little bit critical too, And I can understand that, revisiting his legacy to sort of go, well, maybe they were right there, actually. But he grew, and I think that he was trying to not just be the impresario, but to be, to be everything he could be. And so we'd like to now play one of his compositions, and it's in, as I said, the gospel reference, and it's a tune called Hymn to Freedom. I'd like to feature the great Steve Settergreen. Please make him feel welcome again today. Thank you. Steve Settergreen, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Settergreen. Thank you. Isn't that a beautiful song? I think that Oscar should have probably written more. I mean, I'm sure he did, but we'd like to move on. Talking about composing, I love Henry Mancini. I know he does obviously did a lot of film music. He was a great piano player, and he also was a wonderful, I guess he kept it real as well. I'd like to play this because it's a great version that Oscar played, and I hope you enjoy this one. Moon River. Wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going your way, yeah, too. Drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see, so we're after the same rainbows and waiting round the bend. My huckleberry friend, Moon River. I'm gonna just stick with James for a sec here. But we don't be bubble do. want to sing? Anyone know the words? Ba-do-dee, do-do, ba-do-dee-dee-dee-do-do. Frank Sinatra was also a great inspiration for Oscar. He did a tribute to Frank Sinatra, and he kind of thought of himself as a bit of a Frank Sinatra crooner as well. So this is my little chance to be kind of frank. So it's getting very confusing, isn't it? It's Nina Simone over here, and you got Frank. But it was all part of what was going on, and I don't like to talk about it being like, it was much better back then than it is now. But it was, jazz-wise, you know. I'm just going to say it, because I think they had more of a chance to kind of become those artists. You know, the Franks, you know, the different kind of players. You know, he's coming from Brooklyn, New Jersey, and all that kind of stuff. You know, they weren't trained in a school. They were street fighters. They loved the music, and they grew up on street corners. Louis Armstrong grew up in poverty, man. Nothing. Ray Charles. You know, do we have those kind of people today? Or do we have the people giving those people an opportunity to become those kind of artists? You know, I don't think we do. We've got, you know, I guess the Robbie Williams of the world, and they're good. They're great. But, yeah, there's just something else that's maybe not around anymore, and I wish it was. I wish there was a bit more of that, you know. Maybe it isn't, you know, Beyonce and they've got their own thing going. But that's my little rave to do with jazz and blues and things going on. So I want to just imagine Oscar now singing this song with his trio. Wider than a mile. Yeah, Oscar. I'm crossing you in style someday. Yeah, old dream maker, you heart breaker. Wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Yeah, down to drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. Yes, oh, we're after the same. Oh, the rainbow's in with brown bed, my huckleberry friend, and Moon River, and you, and me. Yeah. James Clark, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left to go. I know this second set is kind of short, so I don't want to get this wrong. 5 minutes. Okay, could I just ask one question? How was the food? Everything great? Champagne and all that kind of stuff? We've got it downstairs, and we're kind of, you know, I've had one glass of champagne. These guys, I want to thank you again, fellas, because these guys played at the Ballarat White Night last night. Yeah. And so they've come all the way from Ballarat this morning to be here after not having much sleep at all. So please, once again, Steve Settergreen, my dear friends, thank you. I'd also like to thank you very much for being here today. Again, it's very special to get a call from the Arts Centre to come and play jazz music and to present something. So I feel very honoured. Thank you, Rebecca. I'd like to thank Linda Calaro. Please put your hands together for Rebecca. She put a lot of work in. Simon on sound. I'd also like to thank Natasha out there for taking some photos for us. Thank you, Natasha. And also Lorenzo, who's over the back there, being Steven Spielberg. And you're all caught on camera, so I hope you know, look, it's not commercially available, right? So, you know, you won't see it, but it's an opportunity for us. So thank you to you for coming along. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, tell everyone. And we hope to see you again sometime. So we've got 5 minutes to go. Sometimes I like to say, requests. Does anyone want to hear their favourite Oscar Peterson? They know something off it. Oh, you see, he's over there kind of on Green Dolphin Street. Sure. You happy with that? Everyone happy with that? Sure. Anyone know the song? Exactly. Okay. Well, that means we'd like to feature Steve, and we'd say good afternoon to you and have safe travel, and thank you once again for having us. I really appreciate it. Thank you. The reason I did that because there was one omission in tonight's concert. Tonight's concert is tonight, right? Oscar did one album with the great Fred Astaire. I meant to include that a little bit earlier on. I wanted to do that because the whole album was basically Oscar with a small band and Fred Astaire tap dancing. So if you love that kind of stuff, if you love probably the world's greatest dancer of all time, check it out. It's Oscar Peterson Trio with Fred Astaire. Might have sounded something like this. I've also got this. I want to fill it all up before you guys are going to make the last 10 seconds really important. I'm a drummer. My father was a drummer, a huge Oscar Peterson fan. Thanks, Dad. I know you're up there checking this out. And I think the best drummers came from tap dancers and the vaudeville kind of thing. Probably the world's greatest drummer was Buddy Rich. He used to be a dancer, right? Tap dancer. You have a listen. It's like a buoyancy. It's like a lift. So I'm going to do this thing. We're going to finish off with that last thing, little thing called Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing, and that's the truth. See if you can hear the tap dancer. Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do what, 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 do what. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do what, 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 do what. Now make no difference if it's sweet or hot. Just give that rhythm everything you got. Yeah, it don't mean a thing. All you gotta do is swing. Come on, Steve. If it ain't got the swing, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing, yeah. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Take care of yourself. Steve Settergreen, ladies and gentlemen. James Clark. Thank you. We'll see you around another time. Take care.